At family dinner, my sister's voice cut through the chatter. Mom and Dad said you never contribute anything to this family. Everyone laughed. I smiled. The kind that hides years of restraint. My name is Shirley Moore. 32, the quiet one, the one who never fought back. They saw a woman who failed to impress. What they didn't see was the $8,000 I wired each month to keep this perfect house from foreclosure. I'd been buying their peace while they sold my dignity. So when Lauren said I'd never contributed, I finally agreed. Perfect, I told them. Then the payments stopped today. Dad choked on his drink. Mom went pale. They wanted truth. They got an invoice. The roast chicken sat in the center of the table, golden and perfect, like everything my mother touched. She believed beauty could hide rot, and maybe she was right for a while. Lauren kept talking. Marble countertops, heated floors, another renovation bought on credit and pride. Derek smiled like a man auditioning for approval. Mom beamed. Dad sipped his wine, pretending he didn't hear the tension in the air. I cut my food into smaller pieces. That was my ritual. Stay quiet. Stay invisible. Let their words roll over me like smoke. Then Lauren's tone changed. We've been talking, she said, squeezing Mom's hand. It's time we address something as a family. The air thickened. Even Tyler stopped fidgeting. You're 32, still renting. Still driving that old car. You're not moving forward, Shirley. You're not contributing. You're just existing. Each word landed like a pin pulled from a grenade. Aunt Patricia nodded. Mom dabbed her eyes. As if pity were compassion. Dad wouldn't meet my gaze. I have a good job, I said quietly. I pay my bills. Lauren laughed, soft and cruel. Are you sure you're not just surviving? Silence spread like smoke after a fire. Forks scraped plates. Someone's glass clinked too hard. Mom finally looked at me, eyes full of apology she'd never say. Dad shifted in his chair, his guilt too heavy to mask. I swallowed, the heat rising in my throat. Let them think they'd broken me. Because sometimes surrender isn't defeat, it's strategy. They thought they'd silenced me. They just taught me where to aim. And somewhere under that perfect chandelier, I started planning my exit. That night I couldn't sleep. The roast still lingered like guilt. Laughter replayed, sharp as glass. Applause echoed longer than the words. I sat on my balcony, city lights breathing below. 1,000 windows, 1,000 better stories. Between the noise and quiet, a memory surfaced. 3 years earlier, a knock after 9. Dad stood smaller than I remembered, shrunk by shame, not age. Can I come in? He asked. We sat at my little kitchen table. He stared at the wood grain, not me. The business failed, he said. The partner disappeared. We refinanced twice. They're going to take the house. If your mother learns everything, he whispered, it will break her. His hands shook, sliding statements toward me. How much? I asked. He swallowed. $8,000 a month. The number hit like cold water. I did the math. A recent promotion. Senior strategist. I could cover it, barely. My down payment would become their lifeline. I'll help, I said. Because daughters patch cracks we didn't make. We shoulder debts we didn't cause. It's temporary, he promised. Months, maybe a year. He meant it when he said it. That was 36 payments ago. 3 years of skipping trips and careful groceries. 3 years of saying no to joy. 3 years of them calling me selfish. While my savings disappeared into their mortgage. What burned wasn't the money. It was how little it meant. In their version, I was the disappointment. In mine, I was the silent scaffold. I looked at the freeway glow. Headlights fell like brief meteors. For once, I didn't feel small. I felt emptied, then strangely light. Freedom doesn't roar. Sometimes it's a backpack finally lifted. Your spine lengthens, your breath arrives. You realize how long you've been stooping. They thought their judgment broke me. I had only bent, storing force. Quiet isn't weakness. It's compression before release. I counted the transfers. 36 deposits. 36 swallowed humiliations. A ledger of love they never balanced. Contribution isn't marble and curated milestones. It's choices you carry when nobody claps. There were other costs, the quiet kind. The startup I didn't join. The Hawaii trip I declined. A good man I let drift away. Because a future meant math I couldn't share. At work, I thrived. At home, I rationed light and noise. I became fluent in excuses, so no one would discover the truth. They benefited from my silence. Tomorrow would not. I'd show them contribution with timestamps and totals. Not apologies, boundaries. Not speeches, numbers. 8,000 ways to say no. In the morning, I'd stop paying and start being heard. The room held its breath with the steam. Napkins waited like small flags of control. Lauren lifted her glass, closing the intervention. "Glad we're aligned," she said. "Time to improve." I nodded once. "Great," I said. "Then something changes tonight." Derek smirked. "Finally taking responsibility?" I opened my phone. Banking app. The table leaned in for gossip. 3 years, I said evenly. 36 payments. 8,000 each. I set the screen by the centerpiece. Transfers glowed in the silverware. Dad coughed, then truly choked. Mom's smile died without ceremony. Aunt Patricia missed her water glass. Lauren squinted, then went quiet. "What is that?" she asked, already knowing. "Their mortgage," I said. "Since your housewarming?" Silence grabbed every throat at once. "Dad asked me," I added. "He begged secrecy." Mom found air. "You promised we'd discuss privately." "You promised temporary," I said. "Months, maybe a year." Derek did the math aloud. 288,000, he breathed. I kept my eyes on Lauren. "You said I never contribute," I said. "So let's match stories." I tapped the screen. "Effective tomorrow, the payments stop." Dad's fork hit porcelain. "Shirley, please, not here." "Where then?" I asked. "Where I'm invisible?" Mom's eyes filled with late grief. "We had an arrangement." "No," I said. "You had a secret. Maintained with my money and your silence." Aunt Patricia whispered. "She's right," then stared down. Tyler watched adults lose their costumes. "This is manipulation," Lauren snapped. "You're punishing them." "This is a boundary," I said. "Punishment ends. Boundaries begin." Derek tried calm authority. "Be rational." "Rational," I echoed. "Humiliate me first, facts later? Call me useless over dinner I helped fund?" I slid the phone to Dad. "Swipe," I said. "Count the months." Mom touched the screen like it forgives. "We didn't know," she whispered. "You knew enough to let them clap," I said. "You watched me shrink and said nothing." Lauren's voice softened, then cracked. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because you'd perform gratitude," I said, "and keep spending like applause was income." Dad stood, then folded back down. His shoulders told what words never did. "Please," he said. "We'll fix this. Don't stop." I shook my head. "I'm stopping, tomorrow." I canceled the automation. One press. 36 months ended with a ping. The sound outlived every toast. I holstered the phone like a cooled fact. "If contribution is appearances," I said, "you win. If contribution is sacrifice, I'm already undefeated." I rose. The chair scraped like a clock. "Enjoy dinner," I said. "Last one I funded." Mom reached and missed my sleeve. "Shirley, wait," she begged. I paused beneath the chandelier's plain light. "Start contributing," I said, "to the truth." I turned at the doorway once. "If I'm nothing, I remove everything I give." The calls would start before I reached the car. Tomorrow, the money stops. Tonight, the silence does. The calls started before I reached the car. Dad, then Mom, then Lauren. I let them ring into the night. Silence finally chose me back. At home, the doorbell cut through quiet. Aunt Patricia stood holding a casserole. "Your mother's recipe," she said softly. "Peace offering or guilt?" I asked. She blinked. "Both." I let her in. "This is nice," she murmured, looking around. "Cozy. Smaller than I imagined." "Everyone imagines me smaller," I said. She swallowed. "Tonight was wrong." "You nodded along," I replied. "I believe the performance," she said. "I'm sorry." "Sorry is cheaper than honest," I answered. "She's devastated," Patricia said of Mom. "She's devastated, the mirror cracked," I said. Not that I bled polishing it. Patricia had nothing left. She left the dish. And silence. Lauren called again. Then again. The fourth time I answered. "Please," she said, "can we talk?" Her voice sounded human for once. Morning, a coffee shop with fogged windows. No audience, just us and steam. Lauren looked smaller without applause. Mascara slept under tired eyes. "I was cruel," she began. "I was performing. I'm sorry." I stirred my coffee. "Why now?" "Derek did the math," she said. "Dad told me everything. I saw your transfers reflected in silver." She exhaled. "I was jealous." "Of what?" I asked. "Freedom," she said too fast. "You didn't carry a mortgage, or a staged life, or applause." "I carried theirs," I said. "You mocked what you couldn't see." She nodded. "We can help now. Derek and I can cover half." And the other half? I asked. You? She offered, hopeful. No, I said. That chapter ended. Her shoulders took the hit. They'll lose the house, she whispered. Maybe they should, I answered. Downsize, unlearn, pay with reality. You don't mean that. I do, I said, calm. They spent my compassion like credit, called it concern, then clapped. They can learn budgets. I'll keep boundaries. She studied me like a stranger. What do you want then? Respect, I said. Not performance. Honesty, even when it's ugly. Tears gathered. She didn't blink. I made you small, she said. I needed to feel big. That's done now, I said. Back at work, the world stayed simple. Deadlines, mock-ups, deliverables that delivered. Marcus asked if I felt lighter. Yes, I said, finally. That evening, Dad called again. A neighbor's number this time. We were scared, he said. Scared, ashamed, and foolish. I know, I said. Accurate. We'll try counseling, he offered. Start with honesty, I said. No more secrets, no scapegoats. He agreed like learning language. I opened my banking app again. No automation, no vanishing. Just a balance that meant me. Lauren texted later, one clean line. We'll cover what we can, and apologize where we must. I let myself believe an inch. Then I guarded the mile. They wanted me smaller. I'm taking my space and keeping it. Months passed quietly, like the world had exhaled. No more family interventions. No more secret deposits at midnight. Just peace steady and unfamiliar. My parents sold the house. The for sale sign looked strange in their perfect lawn. Mom cried the day it came down. But when I visited the new condo, she smiled for real. Smaller, but honest. Lauren and Derek moved too. Sold the house with the marble bathroom. Traded it for something simpler, lighter. They'd started counseling, therapy, budgeting, words we never used at our old table. Sometimes Dad called on Sundays. He didn't ask for help. He asked if I was eating well. That was new. Mom mailed me a framed photo. Our family at therapy, exhausted but real. She'd written on the back, "The day we stopped pretending." Lauren visited one evening, hands full of baby clothes. "I want my child to know you," she said. "The real you, not the version I created." I smiled. That's the only one left. I kept my small apartment another year. Then I bought my own place. 2 bedrooms, sunlight through big windows, a mortgage that felt earned, not owed. I adopted a dog, named him Miles, because distance had saved me. Some nights I still think of that dinner. The applause, the silence that followed, the moment I said the payments would stop. It used to feel like rebellion. Now it feels like beginning. Contribution isn't measured in applause. It's measured in boundaries, in honesty, and in knowing when to stop giving. If you've ever been told you're not enough, remember, peace begins when you stop apologizing for your worth. Have you ever faced something like this? Tell me in the comments.
It had been 4 months since Jordan left. 4 months since she sat across from me at our kitchen table, eyes dry and voice calm, and said she couldn't picture a future with just an EMT. I remember how she tried to soften it, said it wasn't about status, just about alignment, but it was clear. She wanted more. More money, more prestige, more proof that her life was moving upward, and I wasn't part of that picture. My family said all the right things at the time. Vanessa told me I was better off. Dylan said Jordan had always seemed too polished. Even Mom chimed in with her usual blend of pity and optimism. The right person will love you for who you are, not what you do. It felt supportive, real even. Then came the group text from Mom just 2 weeks before Christmas. She said the holidays were going to be different this year. Tight finances, too many medical bills, not enough energy. We're going to skip the big dinner, sweetheart. Just keep it low-key. Maybe something in January, I called her right away, offered to cover everything. Food, gifts, decorations, even hosting it at my place. She brushed it off. You've done enough already, Tess. We'll make it up to you, I promise. I hung up feeling a mix of relief and sadness. I wasn't in the mood for a big family production anyway, but the holidays had always been Mom's favorite. Her excuse felt off, like she was reading a script. The next day, Vanessa sent me a text by mistake. Can you grab wine and those gingerbread things again? Same setup as last year. I stared at the message. When I asked what she meant, she replied, Oops, sorry, wrong thread. No explanation. No follow-up. Dylan didn't respond to my Christmas check-in at all. No Merry Early Christmas, no. Let's meet up anyway. Nothing. Silence from him always feels like a shrug. I tried to brush it off, told myself I was reading too much into things. People get busy. Things change. Still, something didn't sit right. I kept thinking about that text, about the way Mom's voice shifted when I offered to help, the space between their words and what I knew in my gut. So I wrapped a few gifts anyway, just in case. Growing up, I was the quiet one. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I learned early on that saying it didn't change much. Vanessa sparkled always center stage, always praised. Dylan trailed behind with excuses made on his behalf like cushions. He's still figuring things out. He's just not built for pressure. I stopped expecting anyone to make space for me and started filling the spaces everyone else left behind. When Dad left, it was me who helped Mom reorganize the garage so she could turn it into a storage room and rent out the basement. When Dylan flunked 2 semesters in a row, I was the one who picked up shifts and sent him money for textbooks. And when Vanessa got the PR job in Raleigh and had to move in 2 days, I borrowed a friend's truck and hauled boxes until midnight. She posted a photo the next morning with the caption, "So grateful for strong beginnings. No mention of me." There's a picture on the hallway wall at Mom's house, Vanessa at her college graduation cap tilted perfectly grinning. Next to it, Dylan in a hospital gown holding Vanessa's newborn, looking overwhelmed but proud. There's no photo of me in uniform. No frame from the day I finished EMT certification, even though I was the youngest in my cohort and had pulled a drowning toddler out of a pool during my final rotation. When I told them about that call, about the moment I got a pulse back, Mom blinked and asked if I remembered to pick up dog food on the way home. I didn't go into this work to be praised, but there's a difference between doing something quietly and being erased for it. I was always the one who remembered birthdays, paid bills on time, sent thank you notes on behalf of the whole family. I thought it made me solid, grounded, useful, but lately I've been wondering if it just made me convenient, easy to overlook, the one who will always show up no matter what. I packed the gifts carefully, nothing expensive, just thoughtful, personalized, wrapped like they were going under a tree that never got set up. I told myself I wasn't going over there for any big reason. Just to drop off gifts, maybe bring some dinner, make sure everyone was okay. Maybe they'd really decided not to do anything this year. Maybe Mom had just cracked under the pressure of bills and guilt and didn't want to admit it. Maybe it wasn't about me. Still, I chose the gifts carefully. A new watercolor set for Vanessa's daughter, the exact one she'd circled in a catalog back in October. A fleece-lined hoodie for Dylan because he always borrows mine when he visits and pretends he forgot. For Mom, I found a framed print of a vintage recipe card with Grandma's handwriting, one she used every Christmas for her cinnamon bread. I thought it would feel like comfort. I thought it would matter. I picked up Chinese food on the way, our usual backup for nights when things fell apart or nobody felt like cooking. It felt symbolic somehow, like bringing Plan B to a holiday no one had planned at all. The street was quiet at first, lined with frosted mailboxes and blinking reindeer lights. Then as I turned the corner, I saw the cars. Vanessa's white BMW was in the driveway, angled like it always is when she's in a rush. Dylan's Jeep was parked halfway on the curb. My aunt's minivan, my cousin's Civic, even the silver Audi my mom always says belongs to friends from church. Every single one of them there. I slowed down. The house glowed light pouring out of the windows, flickering through the curtains. There were shadows moving inside, silhouettes, passing dishes, someone laughing. The front porch had a wreath. The steps were cleared of snow. I felt it in my chest before my brain caught up. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a celebration. Without me. I turned off the engine, sat in the dark with the food containers cooling on the seat beside me, and tried to breathe past the tightness in my throat. Then I saw her. Through the living room window, Jordan, standing next to Vanessa, laughing, holding a champagne glass. I don't even remember getting out of the car. One minute, I was gripping the steering wheel like it could hold me together, and the next, I was walking up the front steps, Chinese food bag, dangling from my wrist like some pathetic holiday delivery person. Through the window, everything was bright. The dining table was set with the good china, the kind Mom only used for holidays and funerals. The centerpiece was lit with flickering candles, napkins folded into little trees like she'd learned from Pinterest. The tree in the corner glowed ornaments spaced perfectly, not a single bare spot. The kind of detail she used to say only mattered when everyone's together. I scanned the room once and saw them. Jordan and Vanessa standing so close their arms brushed. Jordan tilted her head and smiled, said something, and then passed Vanessa a champagne glass. Vanessa laughed, her hand resting briefly on Jordan's elbow. Comfortable, familiar. My stomach dropped, a cold, hollow weight settling in my gut. They knew I'd see this. Maybe not tonight, maybe not like this, but eventually. They weren't hiding it. There was no shame in their posture, just ease. I stood there frozen, trying to piece it all together. When, how, why, my hand lifted before I made the decision. I pressed the doorbell. It rang out sharp, and just like that the sound inside shifted, laughter dulled, movement paused. Mom appeared in the hallway, glancing toward the door like someone hoping to see a neighbor or anyone else. But when she saw me, her face changed. Not fear, not guilt. Something worse. Disappointment. She opened the door halfway, blocking the view with her body like that might soften the blow. "Tessa," she said, voice tight. "What are you doing here?" I thought Christmas was canceled. I said each word landing heavier than the last. "You said you couldn't afford it." Behind her, silence stretched out. Jordan turned her head. Vanessa stepped closer to her. Dylan stood near the fireplace, arms crossed. No one moved. Mom's hand hovered on the doorknob, unsure whether to close it or open it wider. "I brought food," I said, lifting the bag, "but it looks like I'm late." Vanessa reached the door before Mom could close it. "Tess," she said, like she wasn't sure if she was greeting me or bracing for impact. I stepped inside without waiting for permission. The warmth hit me first, the heat from the oven, the flicker of candlelight, the thick scent of roasted meat, and something sweet baking. Then came the silence. Heads turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. Jordan lowered her glass eyes, glued to the floor. Dylan looked at the ceiling like he was studying it for cracks. I stood there in my boots, holding a bag of takeout like a peace offering in a war I hadn't known I was fighting. "It came together last minute," Mom said. Her voice was soft, her tone measured, like she was trying to keep the story straight without tipping it too far in either direction. "Vanessa offered to bring a few things, and it just evolved. We didn't think you'd be up for it." I glanced at Jordan. She shifted her weight, but still wouldn't meet my eyes. "And Jordan?" I asked. She just happened to evolve into the guest list, too. Mom's smile wavered. "Jordan's still close with Vanessa. You two ended on difficult terms. We didn't want to make it awkward." For who? No answer. I looked around. The table was fully set, extra chairs brought in, gifts stacked near the fireplace. This wasn't last minute. This was planned, intentional. Then I saw at Mom's necklace, the one I gave her last year. I'd spent weeks saving for it, picking out the exact pendant I thought would mean something. She wore it now casually, like a reminder of everything I'd given, even when I got nothing back. I turned to Dylan. "You couldn't text me back, but you could show up for this." He shrugged without looking at me. I laughed once, dry and low. "Right. Of course." I dropped the bag of food on the entryway table, each container thudding against the wood. Why wasn't I invited? I asked the room, not just one person. "Just give me that." No one answered. The silence said everything. No one said a word, so I said it for them. "You planned this. All of you. While I thought we were canceling Christmas, you were organizing a whole dinner, decorations, wine, dessert, gifts. And you didn't think to include me." Why? Vanessa stepped forward, jaw tight. "You and Jordan were already done. Why would you want her here?" I didn't say I wanted her here, I snapped. "I'm saying I deserved to know." Vanessa crossed her arms. "She and I have more in common, Tessa. She actually understands my life, my work. She doesn't just run into fires and call it a personality. That one hit harder than I expected." I looked at Jordan, but she stayed rooted to the floor, lips pressed thin. Not a word, not even a flinch. "I see," I said. "So this wasn't just convenience. This was preference." Mom's voice cut in gently, like it always did when things got uncomfortable. "Tessa, honey, you've always been strong, independent. Jordan fits better with us now." Maybe it's time to let go. Fits better, I repeated. Fits better than the daughter who paid your utility bills last winter, who refinanced her own car loan to help you out after the surgery, who's been babysitting Vanessa's kid twice a week so she can keep her weekends. Dylan rolled his eyes. God, you take everything so personally. My hands clenched. You mean the time I covered your rent, or when you called me crying at 2 a.m. because you lost your job and I Venmo'd you my entire savings? The room got quiet again, but it was a sharp quiet. No one made eye contact. A glass slipped from someone's hand, I don't even know whose, and shattered on the hardwood floor. No one moved to clean it up. I took a step back toward the door. My bag was still there untouched, the food inside now cold. I looked at the people I used to think I belonged to my family, my ex all frozen in their shame or indifference, and I almost walked out. Almost. But something in me, something I'd spent years quieting, told me not to leave just yet. Not without saying the things I had kept locked behind politeness and obligation for far too long. I turned back around. By the time I got back to my apartment, the adrenaline had burned off and left a heaviness behind, more bone deep than exhaustion, more bitter than rage. I dropped my keys on the counter, kicked off my shoes, and sat in silence. No music. No TV, just the sound of my own breathing too loud in a room that finally felt like mine. I pulled out my phone and typed the message quickly. No dramatic build-up, no explanation. You canceled Christmas, but kept to the gifts, the help, and the silence. Don't call. Figure it out yourselves. I hit send, and for the first time in years, didn't care what they thought of me. I logged into every account they had access to credit cards, joint bills, emergency contacts, and removed them one by one. Dylan was no longer authorized to use my Amazon Prime. Vanessa's babysitting calendar was deleted. I changed my emergency contact from Mom to my best friend Marin. She was the one who actually picked me up from urgent care last year when I tore a tendon on the job. Not family. Marin. The banking app was next. I canceled the auto payment that sent $300 a month toward Mom's utilities. That number had grown quietly over the years, starting as just for a little while and never stopping. I told myself it was the right thing to do, the loving thing. But I wasn't sure love should cost this much. I went through my contacts and blocked every number but Mom's. I didn't trust myself to cut her off completely, not yet. There was still a piece of me that clung to the hope she'd call with something real, something different than guilt or denial. But I wasn't holding my breath. The apartment felt quiet in a way that wasn't lonely. It felt new, empty in a way that made space, not pain. For once, I wasn't bracing for a phone call or a favor or a text asking for money disguised as a check-in. I curled up on the couch with the blanket my grandmother crocheted years ago. She was the only person who ever looked at me and saw someone complete. Not a role, not a resource. I turned off the lamp and let the dark settle in. The messages came slowly at first. A text from Jordan 2 weeks after the dinner. I didn't expect to see you that night. I'm sorry if it hurt you. I didn't respond. A week later, another. We never meant for it to happen that way. That was always the line, wasn't it? That way. As if the betrayal had been a scheduling issue. Vanessa emailed. The subject line was, "Can we talk inside?" was a stream of words pretending to be an apology. I'm sorry you felt left out. It wasn't personal. You've always been so intense about things. Like, the problem was my reaction, not their choices. Dylan texted next. No preamble. Just, do you think you could help me cover rent this month? I'm in a bit of a bind. I deleted it without reading the rest. Instead of responding, I spent my evenings updating my resume. There was a listing for a wilderness rescue medic position in Oregon remote terrain, fast response teams, unpredictable weather. It sounded like peace and adrenaline all wrapped together. I applied. 2 interviews later, I got it. Packing was easier than I expected. I kept what mattered: my gear, my books, the quilt from Grandma, the necklace Mom wore that night but never mentioned again. Everything else I donated. I left without saying goodbye. My new place sat at the edge of a pine ridge. Snow, deeper sky, wider air, sharper. People didn't ask what I did in real life. They knew this was real life. I wasn't the helper anymore. I was just Tessa. I adopted a mutt from the local shelter part Shepherd Park ? I named her Scout. We spent Christmas together. I wore flannel pajamas made cocoa from scratch and watched the fire burn low without checking my phone once. There were no gifts, no tree, no tense phone calls. Just silence. Not the kind that punishes, but the kind that settles. The kind that lets you sleep. Scout curled up at my feet as I finished a book I hadn't made time to read in years, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like something was missing. 6 months later, I stood in my kitchen watching steam rise from a pot of stew while Scout snored under the table. The house smelled like garlic and rosemary, and something that felt like home, though not the one I'd grown up in. I'd invited a few people from the team, 3 medics, 1 pilot, and a climbing tech named Rena, who reminded me that trust doesn't always have to be earned with blood. They showed up with mismatched Tupperware laughter and stories that didn't require me to prove anything. No one asked about my past. They just passed the bread and asked if I'd seen the sunrise over East Ridge yet. Above the fireplace was a small framed photo me Scout and the mountain behind us, the sky painted in orange and gold. I'd taken it with a timer one morning before a shift. I didn't look polished. I looked awake. Dad called every now and then. He never pushed, just checked in, said he was sorry again, that he was trying to do better now that the noise had quieted. I believed him more each time. I picked up sometimes. Vanessa and Jordan didn't last. I didn't ask. Why didn't care to hear? The damage was done long before their first glass of wine. Mom left 3 voicemails in the spring. I never listened past the first sentence. That night, I sat at a table I'd picked out myself, surrounded by people who hadn't asked me to carry their lives, but offered pieces of their own. Scout nudged my knee, and I slipped her a piece of bread. I didn't say much. I just watched and listened. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to. I sat near the back 3rd row from the exit in a blazer that didn't quite fit the occasion. Around me, dress whites shimmered under the light's shoulders, square metals, polished shoes like mirrors. The air smelled like starch and history. This was Jake Winslow's promotion ceremony. My younger brother. My father's favorite story. Everyone knew Jake. One of the sharpest seals of his cohort, someone behind me whispered. A real Winslow, another replied, and I didn't even flinch. I'd heard that phrase my whole life. They didn't see me. They didn't recognize me. To them, I was just Claire, the daughter who couldn't hack it, the dropout, the one who tried the Navy thing for a while before vanishing into some vague IT job no one bothered asking about. That was the story my family told. And they told it so often, I think they started to believe it. Maybe I did too, for a while. I adjusted the cuff of my blazer fingertips, brushing the place where my real uniform sleeves used to end. Colonel Claire Winslow, Naval Cyber Command. But not today. Today, I was just a shadow at the edge of my brother's spotlight. Up front, my parents were seated like royalty. Admiral Richard Winslow, retired, still standing ramrod straight in his civilian suit, and my mother Diane Pearls at her throat, her hand resting lightly on Jake's arm. She looked proud, the kind of proud that could break a daughter if she let it. I had no plans to be seen, no intentions of being anything but polite and invisible. But when General Mark Lyman stepped to the podium, broad, composed, the kind of man who never fumbled a word, his gaze swept the crowd, once then landed on me. It stayed there. He paused. Just long enough to shift something in the air. I didn't move. Not yet. I was born into the kind of family where rank came before name. In Norfolk, Virginia, that wasn't rare. Every other house had a flag on the porch and a story about someone who served. But in the Winslow House service wasn't a calling, it was a bloodline. My grandfather commanded destroyers in the Pacific. My father, Admiral Richard Winslow, led operations in the Gulf and briefed presidents. I learned to say "I, sir" before I learned to ride a bike. We didn't take family vacations, we transferred duty stations. The living room was a museum of awards and folded flags, and no one ever touched the wall with his bronze star. There were rules, unspoken but ironclad. Men served, women supported. The Winslow men fought, bled, commanded. The women stood straight at ceremonies and made perfect potato salad. That was the shape of pride. It wasn't cruel, it was tradition. It was what worked. And I ruined the symmetry. I wasn't loud about it. I just didn't fit where I was told to go. While other girls were watching music videos or practicing pageant walks, I was in the garage taking apart an old radio just to figure out how the signal moved. At 9, I beat Jake in a logic game our father brought back from Japan. He threw the board away that night, said it was missing pieces. At 12, I started staying up after lights out, sneaking into my dad's home office. He thought I was sleeping. I was reading old Navy encryption manuals like bedtime stories. I liked the way they made me feel like I was inside something no one else could touch. Then one evening he caught me. I was sitting at his desk decoding a cipher from an old Pacific Fleet drill. The solution came to me fast. I scribbled it out on a yellow legal pad and leaned back proud. He stepped into the doorway. I looked up smiling. I think I cracked it. He walked over, glanced at the paper, and read the sequence. Then he did something I'll never forget. He laughed. Not cruelly, not kindly either. Just that kind of dismissive chuckle that turns your face warm and your spine cold. He ruffled my hair and said, "Stick to cheerleading, Claire. This stuff's for the men who run the show." Then he left, and I sat there staring at the legal pad like it had betrayed me. I didn't cry, I didn't speak, but something in me went quiet that night. Not broken, just sealed. From then on, I knew if I wanted to be seen, I'd have to earn it somewhere outside our house, and maybe never bring it back in. By the time I turned 17, I'd stopped sharing anything that mattered. I still came to dinner, still asked about Jake's training or Mom's book club. I smiled in photos. I played the daughter well. But the part of me that counted the part building something in silence stayed tucked away. That year, I applied to the United States Naval Academy without telling anyone. I trained at dawn, ran 6 miles every morning, memorized specifications for nuclear subs, cracked encryption challenges over lunch. I didn't date, didn't go to prom. I wasn't rebelling, I was preparing, and no one noticed. When the acceptance letter came, it arrived in a plain envelope. No golden seal, no fanfare, just words that changed everything. "We are pleased to offer you admission." I stared at it for an hour. Not because I doubted I deserved it, but because I wasn't sure what to do with the joy. Where do you place it when there's no one to hold it with you? That night, I brought the letter to dinner. My hands trembled. I tucked my hair behind my ears 3 times before I spoke. "Annapolis," I said, laying the envelope down like evidence. I got in. There was a pause. Then my father leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. He didn't smile. He didn't even reach for the letter. "You'll crumble under pressure, Claire. Basic's gonna send you crying home." He pulled out his wallet and set a crisp $100 bill on the table, then turned to Jake. "Bet she drops by week 4. Jake chuckled. Not mean, just comfortable, like it was obvious. Mom reached for my hand. Her voice was soft. "Honey, you're so bright. You don't need to prove anything. You could teach, marry well, be safe. Safe." I looked at the money, at Jake's easy grin, at my mother's gentle retreat. The air felt thick. I said only this: "I'm going." My voice didn't shake, but something inside me shifted away from them. They didn't drive me to Annapolis, said it was too far, too much traffic. I took a Greyhound, 6 hours with a duffel and no goodbye hug. I watched them from the window, Dad standing with arms crossed, Mom dabbing her eyes, Jake checking his phone. For a moment, I wondered if I was making a mistake. Then the bus turned and the house slipped out of view. And that thought never came back. Annapolis didn't ease you in. From the moment I stepped off the bus, it was noise and order and motion. Names barked, boots hitting pavement, someone yelling before I could even breathe. And I loved it. Not because it was easy, it wasn't. But because for the first time in my life, I was somewhere no one knew I was supposed to fail. Still, it didn't take long before the whispers started. "She's a girl, and she's not even that tall." Winslow, as in Admiral Winslow. "She must be here on legacy." They didn't know my father would rather eat his medals than vouch for me. During live fire week, I checked out my rifle and noticed something was off. The sights were misaligned subtly, but enough. One wrong shot and someone could have been hit. Or me. I flagged it. Got told maybe you bumped it. I hadn't. Someone wanted me shaken. It worked. That night in my bunk, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if I was already starting to crack. 3 weeks later, during a cyber simulation drill, I was mid-hack tracking a threat scenario when a surge blew through my station. It knocked me backward hard. The flash fried the interface. And my wrist. Pain radiated up my arm like a fuse had been lit inside the bone. Diagnosis: nerve damage. Recommendation: surgery, months of rehab, possible discharge. I didn't cry. Not in public, but in the infirmary when the curtain closed and the lights dimmed. I lay there watching shadows move across the wall, and for the first time I let myself wonder if maybe my father had been right. I wrote home. Just once. Not asking for help, just trying to anchor myself to something that felt familiar. I got a response 2 weeks later. Mom's letter was kind if you didn't read too closely. She talked about the garden, the neighbor's new dog, and a distant cousin's engagement. She ended with, "You've always been so bright, Claire. Maybe this is a sign to try something more stable." No letter from my father. Nothing from Jake. And then Lieutenant Sarah Denev walked in. She didn't knock. She didn't ask how I felt. She dropped a manila folder on my tray and said, 3 ciphers. Solve them by Monday. I blinked at her. She pointed to the splint on my wrist. "You've still got a brain, don't you?" That was how it began. Every week she brought more, harder puzzles, faster timers, impossible simulations. When I faltered, she snapped, "The Navy doesn't need polished. It needs pressure forged." I didn't know it then, but she was handing me the only thing I'd needed since the day I left home. A reason to believe I could belong even if no one was watching. I stayed. Finished rehab with a brace on my wrist and steel in my spine. The pain never fully left, but I learned how to move with it, how to carry weight differently, how to type again slower at first, then faster than before. I trained when no one watched, studied while others slept. By graduation, I was in the top 5% of my class. I stood at attention in my dress whites medals, still warm from the last polishing. My posture perfect, my salute sharp. My family came just as they said they would. My mother wore navy and pearls. My father, in full suit and tie, nodded with formality. Jake was tall now, 19, still smug around the eyes. They clapped when my name was called, quietly. No cheering, just polite acknowledgement like I'd passed a test they hadn't studied for. At the reception, my father shook my hand like I was someone else's daughter. "You made it through," he said, his tone flat. "But the real Navy's a different beast. That's where we'll see what you're made of." I smiled. Not out of warmth, just out of instinct. Then I turned away before I said something I couldn't take back. I didn't bring up my orders, Naval Cyber Command, or the commendation waiting on my desk. They hadn't asked. So I didn't offer. Over the next year, I ran lead on an operation tracing a cyber attack targeting U.S. ports. Thousands of lives were on the line. Billions in infrastructure. We stopped it barely. My name was on the after-action report top line. That night, I called home. Mom answered distracted. "That's nice, dear. But when are you thinking of settling down?" My father got on the line next. He didn't ask what the operation was. Didn't ask what my team had done. "Lieutenant Command's a stepping stone," he said. "Most don't last there." "Don't get cocky." I hung up staring at the screen, the commendation still in my lap. It was the first time I understood that they didn't just misunderstand me. They had chosen not to see me at all. That Christmas, the house smelled the same clove roast, the faint bite of pine needles. But the silence underneath it had changed. Jake had just finished SEAL training. His uniform was new, the insignia still stiff on his chest. He wore it like it belonged to him before he'd even earned it, and to my parents it did. The living room was already decorated in his honor photos, on the mantel a flag pin in every guest's lapel. His future was the only story being told. "Jake's the real thing," now Dad said to one of the neighbors. "He's where the Winslow legacy lives on." I sat on the couch, gift in my lap, waiting for the right moment to speak. I had just returned from a black ops simulation that intercepted an international sabotage attempt. My team had received classified recognition. I had been promoted again faster than expected. It wasn't something I could share fully, but I thought maybe some part of it could be enough. So I began gently. "We just wrapped a major protocol operation," I said, voice steady. "It prevented a lot of damage. A lot of people are safe tonight." Dad looked up from carving the roast. Not cruel, just unimpressed. "Claire's doing her computer thing," he said. Jake's out there leading men into the real stuff." The room chuckled. Even Jake gave a crooked grin. "Hope your Wi-Fi held up, sis." I didn't answer. I just looked at him. He looked away. Later in the kitchen, I helped Mom with the dishes. She handed me a towel and touched my shoulder like she still believed that was love. "You always were the smart one," she said softly, "just not built for the other path." That was when it happened. I didn't snap, didn't yell. I just stopped. Stopped trying to be seen. Stopped volunteering updates. Stopped giving them the pieces they never wanted to hold. That night, after the gifts were opened and the guests had gone, I gathered my things and left without making a sound. No one asked why, and I never offered. The invitation arrived in a thick white envelope. Inside gold lettering spelled out what I already knew: Jake Winslow, newly minted SEAL lieutenant, would be honored at Coronado Naval Base in 3 weeks. I let it sit on my kitchen counter for 5 days. Some mornings I almost threw it away. Other nights I caught myself rereading it as if hidden between the lines was a reason not to go. My husband Adam watched me quietly. He didn't press. When I finally spoke, my voice surprised even me. "I'm going." He nodded, jaw set. "You don't owe them anything." "I know," I said, "but Jake's still my brother." We both knew I wouldn't wear the uniform. This was his day, not mine. I chose a simple navy blazer, a white blouse flats, polished but unassuming, hair in a low bun. No medals, no insignia. The bars and stars I'd earned stayed locked in a case back home. I drove alone, rehearsed my neutral smile, braced for Dad's comments, Mom's concerned glances, Jake's easy jokes. At the base, I merged with the crowd slipping into the line of guests. It was a warm day. The sun reflected off every shoulder board in sight. They spotted me in the parking lot. "Claire, you made it," Mom chirped, hurrying over. She wore coral, always the opposite of whatever I picked. Dad stood beside her, hands behind his back. "Glad you could show," he said, "the way people do when they don't expect much." Jake grinned and gave a half shrug. "Didn't think you'd want to relive old Navy memories." "I'm just here to celebrate," I said. Inside the auditorium, flags lined the stage. A string quartet played softly. Seats filled with officers, families, commanders. I sat near the aisle, alone. Ceremony protocol began: colors, presented anthems, sung names, called. Then General Mark Lyman took the stage. He was tall, composed. His voice had that calm, practiced clarity. He praised Jake, outlined his performance, his leadership, his future. Then his eyes swept across the room and landed on me. They didn't move. His voice hesitated only a breath, but I felt the shift. Something small in the air changed. He adjusted his notes, continued. I lowered my gaze, willed myself invisible, but I knew what was coming. The final words of commendation passed. Applause rose, then fell, and then came the moment. General Lyman stepped down, walked straight into the crowd, toward me. He stopped, saluted. "Colonel Winslow." It was loud enough for the rows around us to hear. "Your cyber framework saved my team during the Koran breach." I never got to say thank you. The room froze. Conversations cut short. Heads turned. Mom gasped. Her hand flew to her chest. She staggered into a chair. Dad stood motionless, jaw slack. Jake didn't speak. He just stared like someone had rewritten everything he knew. More voices joined. "Wait." Colonel Winslow. The blackout op. A younger officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, your protocols now required reading in Joint Command." I stood up slowly. My blazer suddenly too thin. "Thank you, General," I said evenly. "But today's not mine. It's my brother's." He paused, then nodded with respect. "Understood. But we know who you are." And just like that, the story they told about me cracked. They found me just off the main corridor near a small conference room with the door still half open. My mother was pale, one hand gripping the back of a chair. Jake stood beside her, still in uniform, arms crossed like he hadn't decided whether this was real or not. My father was pacing slow and stiff, like someone walking through a memory he didn't trust. When I stepped in, he stopped. "Colonel," he said, not loud but sharp, "what kind of game is this?" I closed the door behind me. It's not a game. He took a step forward. You let us believe. No, I said. You believed what was easiest. I didn't correct you. Mom spoke next, her voice trembling. Why didn't you tell us we didn't know? Claire, how could we not know? I looked at her, not with anger, just quiet clarity. Because you didn't want to. That's not fair, she whispered. Isn't it? I asked. Every time I tried to share something school missions promotions, you shut it down, or changed the subject, or made it about Jake. Jake shifted his jaw, tightening. I didn't know, he said softly. I mean, I knew something was off. You talked different, carried yourself different, but I didn't ask. I guess I didn't want to be the second Winslow. That landed deeper than anything else in the room. I let the silence stretch. Not to punish them, just to let the truth settle. I didn't stay quiet to hurt you, I said finally. I stayed quiet to protect myself. Dad rubbed the bridge of his nose, suddenly older than I remembered. You're telling me that all these years, while we thought you were floundering, you were running operations like that? Yes. And we mocked you. Yes. He didn't respond, just stood there, the weight of it folding his shoulders in. Then the door creaked open. Adam stepped in quiet as always. You okay? He asked me. Yeah, I said. They just found out I'm not a failure. He looked around the room, then back at me. Took them long enough. A week later, the phone rang just after sunset. It was my father, not a message relayed through Mom, not an email, his voice. We'd like to have you over, he said, formal, like he was issuing a dinner invitation to a visiting officer. Just us, no neighbors, no speeches. I paused before answering. All right. That Saturday, Adam and I pulled into the driveway I hadn't seen in over a year. The porch light was on, the steps swept clean. The door opened before we knocked. Mom greeted us with a hug that didn't hold too tight. Thank you for coming, she said, her voice quiet but steady. Inside, the table was already set. Not for show, just simple dishes, cloth napkins, glasses of water already poured. Dad stood when we entered the dining room. I hadn't seen him rise for anyone in years. Claire, he said, would you sit? Dinner was careful. Everyone choosing words like stepping stones. Halfway through, he set down his fork and looked straight at me. I've been thinking, he said, and I owe you apologies. Not one, several. He didn't list them, didn't explain. I nodded. That was enough. Mom reached across the table and touched my hand. We thought we were protecting you, but maybe we were just shielding ourselves. I didn't answer right away. Then I said I stopped sharing because every time I tried, you turned it into something smaller. I needed to protect what I'd built. Jake, quieter than usual, added, we made it hard for you to be honest. That's on us. No one cried, but something softened, just enough to let the room breathe. 6 months later, I stood on a stage in Washington, the Navy Cross, pinned just above my heart. It was one of the rare moments my work was allowed to surface this time, not behind closed doors or buried under clearance levels. Just a name, a face, a medal that said we see you. In the front row, my family sat together. My mother dabbed her eyes with a cloth handkerchief I hadn't seen since childhood. Jake stood in his seal blues heels, locked spine straight. When I stepped off the platform, he saluted first. My father shook my hand, then pulled me into a brief, unscripted hug. You've redefined what Winslow means, he said. I met his eyes. I didn't do it for the name Dad. I know, he said finally. That's what makes you who you are. Later, someone from the press approached. Colonel Winslow. What does this honor mean to you? I looked past the lights, past the applause, past all the years they didn't see me. And I said, it means I was never lost. A pause. Just never seen.